And the end of all our journeying will be to arrive where we started, but to know that place for the first time. A line from one of our most famous poets, but it's a good thing for us when we're at this point in the journey of reflection we're making together. When we met last time to reflect, we were very clear that on the journey we would come back to the starting point. In other words, back to the everyday life and concerns that we have. But because of the journey, we would see it differently and be able to respond with greater life and greater freedom and joy. The everyday life and concerns. It might also, therefore, be very helpful if those of us who've been walking together in these series of reflections, at this point, go back to the second video we had. Look at that again, and then at this one. Get the links, get the development, see some things now for the first time. The second one in the series. Because now in relationship, we're going to talk about relationship to the actual journey. Now the journey is not where I start from or the place I arrive at. The journey is the going. The journey is unique. You know, at this moment you and I could set out from this room and walk down the hill and arrive at the same place at the bottom of the hill. But we wouldn't. The journey each one of us would have made would have been quite different. We would have seen different things, heard different things, understood them differently. They would have made connections with our life and our experiences and our expectations that would be unique to each one of us. So, relationship with my journey and the journey. Now, those of you who have small children of your own or grandchildren or work with children will have experienced this often, I'm sure. But a little while ago, the granddaughter of a friend of ours called Maria came to visit her grandmother, and she brought with her something she had just happily completed in school. Maria must have been around about 5.5, but she was beyond kindergarten or preschool, and she was now in school. And when she had arrived in her new school, one of the first things she was asked to do, all her class were asked to do, was to show me where you live. They were told to draw a picture, but the picture was to answer that question of the teacher, show me where you live. Now, this is very familiar to any of us who've been with small children. That question, and every skilled teacher of small children will gain a great deal of knowledge about the child from what he or she decides to draw and how they draw it. So let's have a little look at Maria's picture. You can use your imagination. The first thing that surprised me when Grandma handed it over to me was the size of the piece of paper. They had been given the choice of paper. It was kitchen paper, you know, those big rolls of kitchen paper. And Maria had wanted a lot of paper. So on this occasion, she was allowed to have it. At the beginning, it looked quite normal. There was Maria, a little pin drawing in the centre. And there was her father and her mother and her older brother and the baby. And the dog, of course, all there in the middle. In the background was the house, and then the road. And further down the road, the school, the supermarket, the church, all recognizable, and even the railway station. But Maria had gone further than that. she'd moved down to what for her was the big city. And she had lots of tall blocks of building. Then, what she had just learned to draw, the flag of her country. So this was her country, this was the city, and this is where she lived. But she lived in all of this. Then, further still, mountains, and then the sea, and ships on the sea, and aeroplanes in the air, and lumps of hills in the sea, which were obviously the other continents. Each one had a little Maria standing waving. Wonderful. This is where Maria knew she lived. Was this finished? No. Up there was the sun, over there was the moon, and then there were all these things that we would recognize as planets. You know, the one that has rings round it, which all the children know. And they spread out along the top of the picture, and then an arrow pointing beyond them. And this is where Maria knows she lives. Amazing. When I was 5 or 6 years of age and been asked to draw where I live, show me where you live, how much knowledge was there, general knowledge was there, of the cosmic dimensions, the way we're aware of them now, and certainly Maria is. She knows this is where she lives. Everywhere from the unexplored planets, beyond planet 9, and the dwarf planets, to the local church and supermarket. But when I was her age, how much did we know generally of the cosmic environment? And how aware was I of that environment? Or that it was my home. It's where I live. In fact, we can ask ourselves, how aware am I of the cosmic dimensions in which I live? How aware am I today? Behind this is this question of, do I live with a sense of limits? Limits to my possible knowledge, limits to my possible experience. Am I a person where my knowledge and my experience is opening up to these new horizons? Or am I saying no? Am I saying close them in? They're getting too vast. In other words, if I were drawing Maria's picture, where would I draw my boundaries of interest and nourishment, of importance, values? Would I limit it to my family, my job, my friends, my hobbies? It's easy enough to do a checklist for yourself here. Every day we get some international news, the headlines, in the papers, on the television, or the radio, somehow. What am I interested in? And what information do I just simply go bypassed, forget, no interest at all? Have a look. Patterns may have set in. There's no use listening to that, what's happening in the middle of Africa, it has nothing to do with me. So that bypasses us. Scientific discoveries? Well, really, what difference does it make that they've got a planet 9, or they think they have, or they haven't? what the great colliders are coming up with now about the Big Bang or not. Global religion, it's not really all that important. The football is, of course. The Olympic Games, the politicians, the stock exchange. Where do I really live? Which dimensions am I living in? Am I as aware of little Maria? Or have I really begun to close down my areas of interest, my relationship with the environment, the wider, the cosmic environment? We're all on a journey. It's the same journey. It's my journey. It's the journey of the cosmos. How aware am I? Well, we all know what it feels like to be overwhelmed by the amount of scientific and political and sociological information that is pouring into us from every conceivable aspect of communication media all the time. And most of us at some point say, I give up. It's all too much. There's too much, it's too vast, I can't cope with it, so let me cut some things out. Areas that I'm not interested in. I'm on the journey anyway, so it really doesn't matter what's happening in that country, whose name I can't pronounce, and I wouldn't know where to find it on the globe anyway. So it's not important, let's get rid of it. These are questions we have to ask ourselves. We all face the challenge of the enormity of the dimensions in which we now live, and the challenge to say, I can't remain open to it. It's enough to have me, my family, my work, my home, the local football pitch, perhaps the church, the supermarket. Somewhere in the distance I might go for a holiday, but that's it. This is where I live. There are questions that are posed to each one of us, and only each one of us individually can answer those questions. As I said at the beginning, we all look as though we're taking the same walk down the hill, but we're actually, each one of us, experiencing the journey differently. So I have to start answering those questions for myself. And we do have this sense of being overwhelmed by the vastness. We've been told, and we accept it now, that this cosmos, the event of the Big Bang, is not slowing down. The expansion is increasing. And we certainly know at the multidimensional life we have to live in this world at the moment. The discoveries in every field of human experience, the discoveries, the new theories, the new technology. We cannot make our journey too small, but we can't make it vast enough either. Where do I live? It's a very challenging question. I'd like to suggest there's something we could look at which symbolically might help us to cope with the vastness and to see the relationship of the vastness with the small limits. You may remember the mathematical concept that became known in the 1970s, or called that in the 1970s, of fractals, where it's understood that nature is full of these experiences. So it's all around us, where an object or a pattern repeating itself over and over again has some of the elements in the smallest detail that are essential to the vastness of the whole. To be able to find the small part reflecting the vastness, and the vastness teaching us about the small part. Now, those of you who have the mathematical concept in mind will perhaps be able to take it from there, your reflection from there. But for the rest of us, let's stop for a few moments and watch this reality in symbolic form. Just watch a fractal. So, the part captures the whole, and the whole can be known in the part. If instead of looking just at mathematical concepts or filming beautiful colours and motion, we think of fractals as representing an experience in other dimensions of our journey. In the physical, social, intellectual, emotional, spiritual aspects of my journey. That in my journey, all these elements, which are so small, are in actual fact a reflection of the vastness. And in relating to the vastness, I need to relate to the whole and the small. The great mystery. The vastness of the great mystery reflected in the smallness of my experience. And my experience, my inner spiritual experience, caught up into a reflection of the vastness beyond comprehension or description. Some of the questions that have been posed for us in this reflection are going to take time to ponder on, because they are really very challenging, and they're challenging because they are essential. Certainly, I will need time to go back over these questions. I will need to waste time, like the little prince was told to do, to ponder over each one and make it my own, to know my answer to those questions and my experience that gave rise to the answer. And then to be willing to share it share the experience, to share my doubts, my questions, and my answers, my insights. We really only know what we are experiencing and thinking when we find some way of sharing it. If we leave it to lie fallow in our own mind, imagination quickly takes over and distorts the reality. So once we have had time to reflect, to absorb, and to acknowledge that we must respond to the insights, then we need somehow to share them. In many traditions, the understanding that somebody who is really authentically attracted to their own inner spiritual journey will need to do this sharing with somebody else, a spiritual companion along the way. Not so that he or she can tell you what you should be doing or experiencing, but so you can hear yourself explaining what is happening and the gift you've received. And the other can echo back the authenticity of your experience. So I need to ponder deeply. I need to waste time. I need to allow myself to share, to allow myself to trust, to be drawn into that deep stillness of surrender, to listen in the stillness and the silence. That's the only way that my ordinary, everyday journey, in its limited horizons, can be seen as part of the vastness, and the vastness of that great mystery can be seen in mine.